Chapter 3. Isabella stepped out into the courtyard just as a coach bearing the Trevelyan coat of arms clattered through the gate.
"Damn,"
she muttered under her breath before forcing a smile to her lips. Her betrothed, Lord Hugh Trevelyan, smiled when he saw her. "Dearest Isabella." He brushed his lips against her gloved hand. His light brown hair grazed his shoulders, and his fine blue eyes shone bright. She dipped in a low curtsy.
"You have come to see me off?"
He smiled. "Of course, dear friend. I only wish I could accompany you, but responsibilities hold me in town for the next fortnight. Are you quite certain your journey cannot wait?" She smiled but shook her head.
"I am anxious to see my sister and meet my new nephew."
His lips parted slightly, as if he wished to ask her again, but then he pressed them closed and for a moment cast his gaze to the ground. "I am happy for you," he said, still keeping his eyes averted. Her own stomach fluttered with excitement.
"I cannot believe I am to be reunited with Katerina. It feels like a dream."
He smiled and stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I think this trip will be good for you. You will see how content your sister is now that she has wed and started a family." Tears stung her eyes.
"Indeed, I hope to find her very happy."
"When we are wed, you will be equally as content. Love will grow, Bella. Are not friendship and respect the strongest foundations for any marriage?" She nodded, pressing her lips together to fight back her tears. She had heard his defence of their forthcoming nuptials time and again. "But I do not love you," her heart screamed. A rumbling announced the arrival of her carriage.
"Thank you for coming, but I must go now."
She turned away and allowed the footman to help her into the carriage. Hugh peered at her through the window. "I know I can make you happy, Bella." She looked into his warm blue eyes and saw the boy she once knew. There had been a time when she had thought of him as her brother.
"I miss the way we were,"
she said. Then she leaned her head back against the smooth velvet cushion.
"I miss the way everything was."
Regret gripped her heart as her carriage rolled forward through the gate and into the city. After King Edward had sacked Berwick, his first command was the construction of a massive outer wall. For 5 years, Isabella had watched the walls climb higher and higher. They blocked the view of the sea and countryside, confining the city. But even as she left the city limits behind, she knew men would continue to erect her king's dream. Just one more cage for her soul to silently rage against. However, the further from Berwick and Hugh she rode, the easier it became to forget. Rolling hills invited her gaze with a feast of sunshine and flowers. Leaning out the window, she shifted in her seat so she could turn her face to the sun. She slid her finger along the rim of her fitted wimple, which entrapped her hair and neck, letting the sun touch only her cheeks. Still, golden heat eased her spirit. She inhaled the fragrant scent of bluebells. A smile suddenly stretched her lips wide. It grew wider still, until her cheeks ached with delight. The rich scent of flowers and earth combined with the brightness of light, so that she felt as if she were seeing these things for the very first time. And in a way, she was. She had not left Berwick in 5 years, and the Bella who had journeyed from home before was not the same Bella now riding through the countryside. The other Bella had a mother. The other Bella could never have guessed at the cruelties one man could inflict upon thousands of others. Shadow fell as the road snaked through a thick wood. Still leaning out the window, she marvelled at the lush green underbrush that shivered with foraging creatures. Then she jerked back in her seat. She heard thunderous snaps, fast and furious, coming from up ahead, followed by a thud that shook the ground like a giant's footfall the instant before an explosive crack shuddered through the carriage, bringing it to a halt. She slammed forward, then pitched back. Wincing, she righted herself in her seat. The clang of swords stung her ears, and the cries of men her heart. The iron scent of blood filled the air. Her chest heaved as she fought to breathe. Swords and twisted faces flashed past her windows. Trapped. She had to get away. The door jerked open, a leering face. She kicked. The grappling hand retreated. She scurried back. The door she leaned upon burst open. She fell. The hard ground stole her breath. Then men descended upon her. Jack charged through the woods with his 4 brothers trailing just behind. They had been tracking the Redesdale coach for nearly 3 miles, waiting for the flat landscape to give way to a hill from which they could descend upon their prize. Having at last reached a wooded slope, Jack galloped to the top and signalled for them to don their masks. They had moved ahead of the coach, but it was almost upon them. He leaned low in his saddle. The thrill of the catch set his heart to race. Moisture beaded against the fabric of his mask as his breath quickened. He raised his fist in the air, preparing his brothers to attack. Once his fist swung down, they would be unleashed like a furious black storm upon the unsuspecting nobles. Almost there. Just a few yards to go. His breath hitched as a great crack rent the air. He jerked upright and stared with wide eyes at a tree on the other side of the road plunging in front of the coach. The driver pulled hard on the reins, but it was too late. The wheels thundered into the tree, splintering to pieces. Before Jack could draw his next breath, men, dressed in peasants' attire, sprung out from the woods with swords raised high and attacked his prize. He threw up his hands and let loose a string of curses. "What's our move?" Quinn said. Jack shook his head. "We have no move. Those thieves stole our prize." Rory tore off his mask. His blue eyes sparkled. "They're Scottish rebels. 'Tis as Bishop Lamberton predicted. Our people are once more ready to fight." "And look at how well they do against guards on horseback," Ian said. Jack shot a glance back at his youngest brother. His long red hair hung in tangled disarray. "Cover back up, lads. I want a closer look." Jack eased his horse further down the slope to watch the skirmish. The peasants were, indeed, making surprising progress. 3 guards were slain and the others would soon be overwhelmed. He leaned forward in his saddle and eyed the ragged gang. Their humble clothing bore the wear of toil, but their broad shoulders and thick waists belonged to men who did not know scarcity. Jack shook his head. "Look at their swords. Those aren't the weapons of farmers." "What does it matter?" Rory said. "They're fighting the English and winning." Jack's eyes narrowed on the scene below. "Something isn't right." Quinn nodded. "Look at the skill with which they fight. They are not peasants," Jack said with certainty. His brothers fell silent as the last guard was pulled from his horse. Several blades glinted in the sun as the tips were plunged into the wretch's belly. "'Tis done then," Jack murmured. He was about to turn away, but then the coach door opened and a lady fell to the ground. Veils obscured her face. The fineness of her tunic bespoke of great wealth. Again he cursed their luck. Whatever fortune she carried with her should, by rights, be theirs. They had, after all, tracked her for miles. She disappeared behind a sea of men. Ian slid off his horse. "What are they doing?" Crouching low, he darted past an opening among the trees, then squatted behind a large copse. "Ian, 'tis nothing. She is in no real danger. Whoever these brigands are, they will not harm her. Not when they can ransom her for a sizable fortune. Come along, all of you. The lady is no longer our affair. We certainly cannot rob her now." Jack urged his horse around, but then a sob rent the air. Several men fell on top of her, tearing at her clothes. A scream of pure terror sent chills up Jack's spine. "Perhaps I spoke too soon. Scottish rebels or not, we cannot allow them to hurt her," Quinn said. "Why not?" Rory said. "She's the enemy. We do not condone the rape of women, English or otherwise," Ian snapped. "Silence!" Jack hissed. One of the men ripped away the lady's veils. Tears streamed down her face. "Damnation!" he cursed while he beheld her wide, terrified eyes. Ian stood straight. "For the love of God, Jack!" Jack turned about. "Back to the horses, lads. We've an English lady to save." Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to enjoy more videos like this one, click the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time out in the Highlands.